Hello and welcome, I'm your Code Monkey. Alright, so let's talk about what's been happening with Unity and what are my thoughts on all of it. There's a bunch of people really upset with Unity right now over a series of decisions. Now, I really didn't want to do this video. I want to spend my time making interesting tutorials and fun video games, but if I don't make this, then some people might take my silence and interpret it as approving of some bad moves. Just the other day, I did a fun video highlighting a fun new asset all about dogs, and one of the comments was accusing me of being paid by Unity to do PR, despite the fact that the asset link wasn't even going to the asset store, so Unity wasn't involved in any way in the making of that video or even making any money from anything in there. Then there were also some people asking me if I think that Unity is doomed, if I'm going to quit Unity and switch to another engine, and so on. So to answer all of that, here I am making this video so you all know what is my point of view on everything that's been happening. Here's all of the topics that I'm going to cover: the recent Unity layoffs, the merger with IronSource, the accusations of malware, and the CEO calling developers effing idiots. There's a lot of anger floating around because of all of this. Some of it is absolutely deserved, but also some of it is based on some extremely misleading or incorrect clickbait headlines. And also remember, these are just my own thoughts. I know tensions are high, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind, just sharing my own thoughts so you know where I stand and trying to clarify some misleading information that is floating around. So feel free to disagree, but do so respectfully. For example, Cal, who is the main Unity contact that manages influencers, he saw the spotlight on all of these negative things and he decided to do a thread to highlight some great things that a bunch of teams working on the engine have done. It wasn't meant to minimize these bad decisions, just to highlight that there's thousands of people still working on all kinds of things inside Unity. It's not just the negative things that you see in headlines. And yet some of the comments on that thread are accusing him of being a shill or doing some damage control. Remember that Unity is a massive company and there's tons of people that are doing their best and certainly don't agree with many management decisions. Also related, a while ago Unity sent out some swag kits to a bunch of people. I made a quick video unboxing and showcasing what was inside. And since the package arrived right after the layoffs, a bunch of people accused it of being a PR move, including on some comments on that video. So to clarify that, nope, that was not a PR move. This was literally in the work for 6 months. I sent them my address around January, and again, the people involved in this have nothing to do with the people involved in any major acquisitions or layoffs. Another reason that I didn't really want to make this video is because I'm not going to be as angry as some people expect. Tensions are really high right now, but for me, I like to keep a cool head. I try my best to analyze things rationally rather than emotionally. I'm not going to be as rage-filled as Twitter is, so I'm guessing this video will have more than the usual 2 to 3% dislike ratio, and if you do, just please write a comment on where you think I'm wrong. As I've said so many times, an engine is just a tool, in this case a game-making tool. All that I want from my game-making tool is the ability to make the games that I want to make, so for you, use whatever tool you want that can enable you to build whatever games you want to build. Anyways, with all that preamble out of the way, let's go through this list of topics. Now, the first one is the layoffs. So first, my analysis on why I think they happened, and then my thoughts on if this was a terrible decision. And before I get to that, in order to understand this and the IronSource merger, I think it actually helps to look at it from the point of view of economics and the stock market. It helps to have that knowledge and look through that lens if you're trying to understand why on earth Unity does all of these questionable decisions. Now for me, I never went to school to study economics or investing or the stock market or anything like that, but just like with game dev and programming, I managed to learn quite a bit in a self-taught manner. Since I'm self-employed and I work in a very dicey industry where a game can be a hit and the next one be a huge flop, because of that, I had to learn quite a lot about how to manage my finances and investments. I never wanted to be in a position where I was risking going bankrupt and homeless because of a single game failed, so I've learned quite a lot about economics and the stock market, which gives me a different point of view. With that in mind, on to the layoffs. If you're not aware, around 3 weeks ago, Unity laid off about 4% of their workforce, or around 200 people. The people that were laid off were mainly related to AI and, also importantly, the entire internal production team. So that's the team that was working on Gigaya. From their official response, they said the goal was to realign resources to better drive focus and support our long-term growth. Also in an interview, the CEO said that half of those people have found jobs in other parts inside Unity, although the people that I know on Twitter, people that are extremely valuable with many years of knowledge and experience in Unity, from those they weren't rehired, so not entirely sure who was. Now, my analysis as to why this happened is that they simply wanted to cut costs. As you might know, the global economy and the US stock market is currently going through a downturn, and companies like Unity, which are currently unprofitable, they're trying to reduce their burn rate and focus on the profitable parts of the business. Gigaya was never meant to turn a profit. It was intended to be launched as a completely free game. So again, from a point of view of economics and a downturn, I can understand cutting an unprofitable project during rough times. However, I absolutely think they made a huge mistake in firing that whole team. The damage to morale and the excellent people that they've lost is, at least to me, worth much more than the several $1,000,000 they would have spent. To get a rough idea of the numbers, we can look at their financial statements to try to guesstimate how much they're supposedly saving by letting go of 100 people. According to the latest Unity filings, they have about 5,800 employees and $1.4 billion in expenses. They're a software company, so I assume the big part of those expenses are the employee salaries. The non-salary costs would be server costs, maybe the cost of buildings, food, and whatever else. So let's make a very rough guesstimate of around $1 billion spent on employee salaries. That would be a total average of around $200K per employee. Remember that here we're talking about the cost to the company itself, not what the employee actually receives. Personally, I am very painfully aware of this difference. Legally, I have my own company where I'm the only employee, and I certainly know the huge difference between what my salary costs to my company and what I actually personally receive. So with a cost of $200K per year per employee, that means they're saving about $20 million per year by letting go of 100 people. Or even if you assume that no one got rehired and the number is 200 people, even then you're just quote-unquote saving around $40 million. According to their latest filing, they had about $1.7 billion in cash. So to me, even if you were to imagine being a very cold calculating accountant, someone just looking at the numbers and completely ignoring all of the humanity behind it, even from such a cold point of view, this move makes no sense. 20 million when you have 1.7 billion is really a drop in the bucket, and the real cost of damage to morale and the loss of highly experienced people to me seems to be worth so much more than that. So my analysis on the layoffs and Gigaya, I can understand cancelling a project that was never meant to turn a profit, and with my very rough guesstimate, I can understand cutting a game that was going to cost $20 to $40 million and was never going to make any money back. So I get that, however, I think it's a huge mistake letting go of those people. I think the damage to morale in losing some extremely experienced Unity developers is worth a lot more than the couple million that they are saving. So whoever made that decision, I really don't know what they were thinking about, because it seems like a terrible decision both from a humanity point of view as well as just from a cold calculating point of view. If the goal was to focus on more profitable parts of their business, then I think the best course of action would have been to cancel the unprofitable project but keep those extremely talented individuals and move them to different projects. It would still suck to have Gigaya cancelled, I was really looking forward to it, but it sucks so much more and is much more of a huge hit to morale to have those people completely lose their jobs. When this news broke, that's when I started getting questions asking if Unity was a sinking ship and if it was doomed to die quickly. The people asking me those things were probably doing so based on the extremely serious headlines that they were reading, calling the layoffs major and making it sound like half the company was fired instead of the 4%. Again, I'm not dismissing the human costs. If just one person is fired, it's a tragedy for that person. Like I said, I think it's an extremely stupid decision, and I feel for the people that lost their jobs, so I'm not trying to minimize the pain of those 100 or 200 people that were laid off. But at the same time, these hyperbolic headlines are really completely devaluing the work of the remaining 5,400 people that still work there. So on this topic, yes, I think it's an extremely stupid decision, and no, I don't think Unity is doomed. Then the next topic is IronSource, which has two subtopics. That's the dollar cost and the malware question. First of all, on the cost, which again, there are some hyperbolic, straight up false headlines that are incorrectly reporting as Unity spending $4.4 billion in cash to acquire it. It would definitely sound really bad to have some layoffs to save a couple mil and then go out and immediately spend $4 billion. But regardless of what the headlines say, that is not what happened. Again, this is where it helps to have some knowledge of basic economics in the stock market instead of being outraged at false information. The IronSource deal is a merger, it's not an acquisition, there's no cash changing hands, the entire deal is only using stock. So if you see someone say that Unity should have spent those $4 billion on keeping their employees, be aware of that difference. Unity did not spend $4 billion in cash. They spent $0 in cash, and they are instead converting each IronSource share into about 0.1 Unity shares. If you currently hold shares of IronSource, then you're not going to get any cash added to your account. Your shares will simply convert into Unity shares. And as to where those shares are coming from, they are simply creating new ones and diluting current shareholders. So if you also hear someone say they're doing this to screw the little guy and benefit shareholders by giving them a pile of money, that is literally not true. If you're a shareholder, your shares are going to be diluted, so you're going to be owning less of the combined company, although obviously management feels that in the long run, this merger will pay off. So if you want to be angry on this merger, then by all means stay angry, but make sure that anger isn't based on false data, like the assumption that they spent billions of dollars in cash. Then the more serious part of this deal is with regards to malware or adware. I saw those accusations right away and definitely concerned me deeply. Basically, what the company does isn't really something that affects me. I don't use Unity ads in my premium Steam games, but potentially having malware inside Unity is a huge, massive red flag. However, as I researched all the links that were being passed around on Twitter, I also noticed that they were all from around 2015 to 2016. So I kept researching to find out if there was any truth to this accusation or if perhaps something had changed since that long ago. And from researching further, here's what I found out. Now, it is true that the company IronSource originally had a product named IronCore. This program was apparently some kind of install wizard SDK, you know, the little programs that help you install some kind of program. So you could use their SDK to make installers for whatever program you had that you wanted your users to install. And if you've used those installers, particularly around 20 years ago, then you've certainly seen how sometimes they had a sneaky checkbox to install a completely unrelated program. Like say maybe you're installing a free browser and in the installer you can also click on a checkbox to also install a toolbar. Or maybe you're installing some kind of video player and there's a checkbox to also install some antivirus software. The way that business works is that toolbar or antivirus company would pay a commission to the installer for every installation. However, one extremely important thing that is missing from all the discourse on Twitter is that the company only made the installer SDK. They weren't the ones making the individual installers that were being distributed with malware. They just made the underlying SDK, and then any developer could take that and make their own installers, which could include whatever extra nefarious programs they wanted. So as a comparison, for example, with Unity, you can make an executable that runs whatever code you write. So you can use Unity to create a virus program. However, if you do that, if that happens, is it Unity's fault for that virus existing? Or would that be considered a separate, unrelated developer using the tool to make a nefarious program? But either way, most people don't really pay that much attention to installers. They just tick all the boxes and assume the only thing being installed is what they actually intended to install. So yep, IronCore did exist, and yep, the way many developers used it, it functioned very much like adware and malware, so that's very bad news. Even if the company was really only building the SDK and not the actual malware, it still happened because of their product, so still somewhat bad news. However, the reason why the links that were being circulated on Twitter were from around 2015 and 16, the reason for that is because the tool has since been deprecated and no longer exists. Basically, the people behind the company want to grow the company into a serious business, and they realized that to do that they had to stop profiting from such a shady business model. So over time they diversified away from IronCore, which used to be their main moneymaker, and focused on generating money in different ways, specifically through targeted ads. Then in 2020 they officially discontinued it. If you go to the official website, you get a message saying it has been discontinued and no longer operates. So yes, the company IronSource did have a program that, due to how it was used by certain developers, was considered malware, but have since deprecated it, and as of 2022, they have no relation to any malware or adware. Again, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. If you're angry about this acquisition, then by all means stay angry. If you feel that it's inexcusable that the company was involved either directly or indirectly in such a shady business in the past and no amount of change will ever fix that, then fine, that's for you. But also be aware that this is no longer the case today. As of 22, the company that Unity is merging with has no business with any adware or malware. Beyond these two topics, I just researched the company in general since I didn't know about them. I'm still not entirely 100% clear on what they do, there's way too many buzzwords on their website, but apparently they are in the ad mediation and user acquisition business. So they have a huge library of data to make their ad targeting more efficient and lower costs for user acquisitions. These are all mobile focused things, so for me as someone who makes premium PC games, none of this has any impact on me. I don't use Unity ads and I don't require user acquisition, so there's literally no change to how I use the engine. However, if you are a developer who makes free-to-play mobile games and uses Unity ads and depends on user acquisition, if that's the kind of business that you run, then this merger is actually an excellent thing for you. Again, to understand why this acquisition happened, it helps to know the basics of economics in the stock market. As you might know, Apple made some serious privacy changes that completely broke many third-party advertiser business. Nowadays, you need permission from the user to send their advertiser ID to a third party, and pretty much everyone disabled it as soon as it became an option. However, those changes are no longer an issue if the apps and games are built with your own tools and stay within your own ecosystem. So the reason why this merger happened is simply because IronSource has a massive amount of installs, and with that comes a massive amount of data. One of the bigger parts of Unity as a business and the games industry in general is the free-to-play mobile market. Personally, I'm not much of a fan of that business. I don't normally play mobile games or engage with free-to-play games with microtransactions. So for me, I don't much care about that side of the industry, but I do know that it's massive. With this new wealth of data, Unity can now provide better targeting for their ads, which increase the rates that developers earn from their ads, and also lowers the cost of install for advertisers. Like I said, if you're the kind of person who makes free-to-play mobile games based on user acquisition or Unity ads, then this merger is actually excellent news for you. And if you don't, if you're like me and you make premium PC or console titles, then this merger has absolutely no change. And if you're the kind of person who heard this news and your immediate reaction was, oh no, Unity is a sinking ship, then the answer is literally the opposite. With this merger, they are adding on to the part of their business that actually makes money, so this merger will actually help them be more profitable, which will help them survive and weather any downturn. Honestly, I think on this topic, the only reason that people are angry is because it happened so soon after the layoffs. If there hadn't been any layoffs, then this merger would have been just another news of no importance to anyone outside of the stock market. So to sum up my views on this topic, I was deeply concerned when hearing about the potential malware, but I am now okay after researching and finding out that it's no longer an issue in the present. And with regards to the company itself, like I said, I make premium PC games, and this company deals with ad mediation user acquisition, so for me there's literally no change whatsoever, no positive or negative change. And if you're a developer who uses Unity ads or user acquisition, then this is actually a positive for you. Now on to the final topic, which is the CEO calling developers effing idiots. This is probably the part of the video that's going to cause a lot of people to hit the dislike button, because even though I think he 100% chose the wrong words, I would not have used those words myself. I'm not a fan of calling people idiots or cursing, especially if I was the CEO of a massive company, so I completely disagree with the choice of words. But when you look past the headlines and you read the comment within the full context, there's really nothing that I can see to be outraged about. Basically, a lot of people read the headlines and the various articles written about it, and their interpretation was Unity CEO calls all developers effing idiots. Some people even took a more evil interpretation, something like Unity CEO says developers who don't maximize and abuse monetization in all of their games are effing idiots. However, if you read through the whole interview, a more accurate representation, at least in my view, is Unity CEO says people who are trying to build a successful business making mobile free-to-play games are idiots if they don't focus on monetization from the very beginning and don't analyze to see if what they're doing is working. That to me has a very, very different meaning from the inflammatory headlines that everyone is sharing. This comment came from a recent interview on pocketgamer.biz. Just by the name of the website and the articles that they write, you can tell who is the target audience for this interview. It is not hobby developers making games for fun and joining game jams on itch. The target audience is people who are interested in mobile games and specifically on the business side, making games as a successful business. So that's the first important bit of context. The next important point is the question that precedes that infamous comment. The interviewer basically asks, why is Unity focusing hard on growth and monetization? What feedback did you get from developers that led to this direction? And the answer first comes from Mark, who is the senior vice president on the create side of Unity, meaning the Unity editor and all the game creation tools. And his answer is basically because nowadays there's tens of thousands of new mobile releases every single month. So we no longer live in a world where you can just make a game with an interesting idea, launch it and find massive success. Instead, nowadays, if you want to make games as a successful business, you really need to rise above the noise and find the right customers. And how you do that is by using all of the tools that Unity and now IronSource provides to test out your core gameplay loop and all of your monetization. Then the infamous comment comes from John Riccatello, who basically says, again in the context of users who want to make free-to-play mobile games and turn them into successful businesses, for those people, he says if they choose to ignore all of these tools that help you analyze and improve your core gameplay loop, if you ignore all of these monetization tools at your disposal and your goal is still to make a living, then he says you are an effing idiot. Then afterwards he basically says the same thing but now with a better choice of words. You can choose to make just a game and publish it and hope for the best, or you can use these tools to think about monetization from the very beginning to make sure you're on the right track. But to intentionally ignore it and not worry about monetization or getting feedback at all is, as he says, not a great call. If you're a regular on the channel, then you know I've talked a lot about the importance of marketing if you're trying to find success with your game development. You've probably seen my series that I do every single month where I go through all of these Steam new releases and pick 10 interesting games. What you might not see in those videos are the dozens of games with lots of care and effort put into them, and I'm sure the developers behind them wish to find success, but because they neglected monetization, or in this case of premium games it's more marketing, because they neglected that, then they end up selling just 100 copies and are unable to continue working on their dreams without requiring a regular job. As usual, context is key. The advice is different if you're making games as a hobby for fun, or if you're trying to make this how you earn your living. If you come up to me and you tell me, hey, I want to make game dev my business and I'm going to build a free-to-play mobile game, what should I do? If you ask me that, I'm certainly not going to call you an idiot, but I am going to tell you that it's an extremely tough business, and in that specific niche, the free-to-play mobile games, in there you absolutely need to take monetization seriously from the very beginning if you want to make a living doing game dev. If instead you come up to me and you tell me you're doing game dev for fun as a hobby, then I'll tell you don't worry about monetization, just build whatever you want to build and just have fun. Context really is that important when it comes to interpreting advice. Also, quick update, just as I was editing this video, there's been a new statement. Basically confirms that the way that I interpreted that statement is how he meant to come across, even though he does admit that he completely failed at communicating what he meant. So on this topic, I see this as a CEO that chose his words extremely poorly, and when coupled with the tense atmosphere of the layoffs and accusations of malware, with all that together, it made for a perfect storm of people taking it out of context and just getting angry based on headlines alone. But as for the essence of what he was talking about, I genuinely don't see any reason to be outraged. Like I said, I would give the exact same advice, albeit worded differently. Finally, my answer to all the questions that I've received, starting off with, is Unity doomed? Is it going bankrupt? And the answer is no. If anything, this merger and the layoffs increase their revenue and lower their costs. So regardless of how you feel about it, they are now in a stronger financial position than they were previously. I believe they are now guiding for $2 billion in revenue by next year and finally starting to make a profit. On top of that, with this merger, they also announced that they have received a $1 billion loan from the main shareholders, which will put their cash balance at around $2.7 billion. So with that, no, they're not doomed. No, they're not going bankrupt anytime soon. Next question, with Gigaya cancelled, does that mean Unity no longer cares about game development? Personally, I really don't see how this line of thinking makes sense. If this is how you think, then what do you think Unity cared about until they announced Gigaya just 3 months ago? Like I said in my analysis, I think this is simply a matter of them trying to cut costs, trying to cut unprofitable projects, nothing else. So I think they care as much about game development as they did 3 months ago. Next question, Unity is making all kinds of acquisitions related to film and TV, industrial, metaverse, and many other industries. Does that mean Unity no longer cares about indies or game developers? Again, my analysis is no, I don't think that's the case. Unity is a massive company with over 5,000 employees. All of those people work on all kinds of things. They're expanding and diversifying into many areas other than game development, but I see no indication of cutting back on the game dev side. The engine continues to get updates, the roadmap is full of game dev related things, so no, I don't think this concern is a valid one. Next up, with Gigaya cancelled, does that mean Dots is also going to be cancelled? I really saw a comment like this one and it really annoys me to see people try to spread completely unfounded accusations and rumors. Literally nothing negative happened with Dots. In fact, the latest massive update to version 0.51 just happened less than 2 months ago. So there's no reason to link what happened with Gigaya with Dots in any way. As far as I can tell, the roadmap to hit 1.0 by next year is still going according to plan. And even if you're very cynical and think that management is all that matters and they can easily cancel it, Dots is the brainchild of Joaquin Ante, who is one of the founders of Unity and is currently the CTO or the Chief Technical Officer. So even if you think management is going insane, unless Joe leaves the company, there's no reason to fear Dots. And the popular question, should I switch engines? Are you going to stop using Unity? Like I've said many times, an engine is simply a tool, use whatever tool you want. For me, I've never had any interest in the game engine wars. If you want to switch, go ahead and try out Unreal or Godot, both of them are excellent tools. As for me, like I said, nothing in these events has changed the engine at all. The engine is just as great now as it was a month ago, so for me, I'm going to keep using Unity. My goal is to make games, and as long as Unity allows me to build the games that I want to build, I'm going to stick with it. If one day I have a game idea that I absolutely cannot execute with Unity, then at that point I may switch, but as of right now, everything that I can imagine, I can build with Unity. So anyways, these have been some intense couple of weeks, but these are my thoughts on matters. Feel free to discuss in the comments if you agree or disagree with my analysis. Either way, I just want to put this in the past. I just want to make fun games and interesting tutorials, so I really hope there's no more massive Unity news, at least for a few weeks. Alright, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.